Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to take you on a deep dive into one of the most dramatic and strategically significant events of our time. What some experts are calling the strategic earthquake of the land bridge destruction. The phrase isn't literal, we're not talking about tectonic plates shifting under a literal bridge, but the analogy is that the destruction of a critical land bridge or corridor carries seismic consequences for geography, economics, strategy, and politics, in much the same way an earthquake shakes the ground beneath us. So let's explore what was destroyed, why it matters, how the ripple effects are being felt, and what it means going forward. First, let's establish exactly what we mean by land bridge. In this case, it refers to a geographic corridor, a strip of land or a transport axis that connects two major regions and whose control or disruption has outsized significance. It could be a physically narrow isthmus, a vital civil infrastructure route, a choke point in transport or trade, or even a contested landmass whose status underpins broader strategic balances. When that kind of land bridge is destroyed through conflict, infrastructure sabotage, environmental disaster, or geopolitical reshuffling, the consequences go far beyond the immediate blow. They reverberate across economies, military postures, regional alliances, resource flows, and the lives of ordinary citizens. The reason experts invoke the earthquake metaphor is that the shock doesn't behave in a linear, gradual manner. Instead, the destruction triggers sudden shifts, aftershocks in sectors far removed from the physical location, redistribution of power, rerouting of trade or supply networks, and a redefinition of strategic lines. Like an earthquake, a sudden rupture, immediate damage, then cascading effects that may last for years. That's what makes the event compelling for review. We need to understand both the initial rupture and the wider aftershock pattern. So, what are we looking at? The destruction of that land bridge has a few layers. 1. The physical or logistical collapse of the link itself. Maybe a key road, railway, pipeline, or shipping route was severed or became unusable. 2. The strategic vacuum or opportunity that emerges when the link is gone or contested. 3. The broader regional response, including shifts in alliances, economic reorientation, military posture changes, and local population displacement. When you line all three up, you get the kind of strategic earthquake that analysts warn about. Let's begin with the physical collapse. Imagine a vital rail crossing between two commercial hubs, or a land corridor that militarily connected friendly territories. At the moment of destruction, what happens? Transport grinds to a halt. Goods that used to flow smoothly now must detour or stop entirely. Civil supplies, food, fuel, medicines may become scarce or delayed. Local economies suffer. Administrative and logistical cost balloons. Alternative routes may be longer, more expensive, or vulnerable. In many cases, the destruction may be intentional via military action or sabotage or secondary to natural disaster or neglect. But regardless of cause, the effect is the same. A vital artery has been severed. From the moment of rupture, the first wave of consequences begins to unfold. Local businesses that depended on that land bridge face immediate losses. Shipments that used to take hours may now take days or may be impossible. Manufacturing plants which relied on just-in-time delivery may shut down. Basic consumer goods may disappear or become pricier. Governments must scramble to compensate, reroute, find alternatives, and maintain supply chains. All this happens while security concerns and instability may rise, because the severed corridor often becomes a contested zone, and competing powers may see opportunity in the disruption. The second wave is strategic. Control over geography often equates to strategic leverage. When the land bridge is gone or disrupted, the actor that previously had advantage loses part of its leverage. Meanwhile, rivals or opportunistic actors may step in to establish new links, create alternative corridors, or exploit the vacuum. Supply chain dependencies may shift. A national economy previously tied into the corridor now must look elsewhere, shifting its trade partners or logistical strategies. That can change the balance of power regionally. Key infrastructure becomes more than just economic. It becomes political and military. Third, the ripple effects or aftershocks. Neighboring states, allied powers, global supply chains, commodity flows, investment flows, even cultural or social flows may be affected. Consider that a key land bridge may have provided access to resources, oil, gas, minerals, and that when it is disrupted, extraction or transport of those resources becomes costlier or shifts to different actors. For investors, risk profiles change. For militaries, access routes alter. For civilians, jobs and incomes may vanish. Over months and years, what started as a physical destruction becomes an enduring strategic reorientation. To illustrate, let's ground it in a hypothetical but realistic scenario. A land corridor connecting a rich hinterland to a maritime outlet is sabotaged or lost to war. On day one, transport is halted. On week one, regional authorities begin emergency shipments by alternate means, but those are slow and expensive. On month one, unemployment in transit towns spikes. Traders cut their losses and relocate. On quarter two, a rival power offers to build a new route through its territory, gaining influence and securing future trade tariffs. On year one, the original corridor's nation has lost market share internationally. Its export volumes drop. Foreign investors look to the rival route. Its strategic dependence shifts from one ally to another. The destruction of the land bridge thus echoes like an earthquake whose main shock is followed by aftershocks for years. Now let's look at why some experts say this event is strategic and why the term strategic earthquake is apt. Not every infrastructure failure carries this level of consequence. What makes a land bridge destruction strategic is the combination of scale, connectivity, dependency, and potential for shift. Scale: the corridor must serve many users, high volumes, or crucial flows. Connectivity: it must link major regions or functions: energy, trade, military. Dependency: both users and states depend heavily on it. Potential for shift: there must be alternatives or rivals ready to step in, so that when the link goes, the balance moves. When you have all these factors, the destruction is no longer a local catastrophe. It becomes a strategic pivot. The shock changes the operating system of the region. Just as an earthquake might crack foundations, buckle highways, shift fault lines, and reshape landforms, the strategic earthquake of land bridge destruction changes how states, companies, and societies operate. It forces rethinking of supply chains, trade routes, alliances. It demands new infrastructure investments, new risk assessments, new military postures. It may accelerate diversification of dependencies. If previously one corridor served 70% of a country's exports, loss of that corridor forces the country to find multiple smaller links, even if costlier. That in turn affects competitiveness, cost of goods, and national budgets. Another important aspect: timing and perception. The destruction may be sudden, but its strategic consequences unfold over time, and often the full weight is only seen years later. That means policymakers and analysts must look ahead, anticipate aftershocks, not just focus on the immediate damage. If they fail to anticipate, they may be blindsided by second-order effects. For example, a competitor gaining long-term advantage or supply chains permanently shifting away. Let's talk about responses. When the land bridge is destroyed, what are the possible responses and what do they imply? One option, repair or rebuild the corridor quickly. That is often the best outcome, but may be very expensive, logistically difficult, politically contested. Another, find alternative routes. That might involve major investments in new infrastructure or temporary workarounds, air, sea, longer land routes. Yet another, restructure the economy to reduce dependency on the corridor, diversify export destinations, change modality of transport, sea or air instead of land, invest in local processing. Some goods don't need the corridor. Finally, from a strategic standpoint, the state may have to negotiate new partnerships, security arrangements, or concessions to whoever provides the new route. In each of these responses, there are costs and trade-offs. Repairing may require large borrowing, diverting budget from other priorities. Alternative routing may cost more per unit of goods, reducing competitiveness. Diversification takes time and may not fully offset the lost corridor. And strategic concessions may give rivals lasting influence. Thus, the destruction is not only about what was lost, but about what the country must now pay in new shape. Financially, the cost is both direct and indirect. Direct costs include infrastructure repair, logistical disruption, lost output. Indirect costs include higher shipping and transport costs, longer transit times, increased inventory holding, higher risk premiums, lost investment, declining competitiveness. These can add up to a substantial drag on growth, especially if the corridor was central to the national economy. Militarily and geopolitically, the corridor's destruction can shift power. For instance, if a land bridge had enabled rapid troop movement or logistics across regions, its loss affects defense planning. Rival states may exploit it by offering new logistics lines or by positioning themselves as alternative hubs. The controlling actor of the old corridor may lose influence while new actors gain. The strategic map is redrawn. Let's talk about the humanitarian and societal dimension. When a corridor is cut, ordinary people bear burdens. Jobs may disappear, incomes shrink, goods become more expensive or less available, travel becomes harder, regions may become isolated. Border towns and transit hubs that thrived may suffer. Displacement may rise as people move in search of alternative livelihoods. Social systems may strain. Governments must manage not only infrastructure but social cohesion, risk of unrest, migration flows. The strategic earthquake, thus, has a human side. We should also consider longer-term structural shifts. A destroyed land bridge may accelerate trends that were already underway. For example, decentralization of manufacturing, relocation of logistics hubs, emergence of new trade corridors, perhaps maritime instead of land. A state may invest in digital infrastructure and services to offset the loss of physical connectivity. There may be environmental consequences too. New routes might cut through fragile ecosystems. Alternative transport may be less efficient and emit more pollution. So what seems at first like a one-time hit can become a transformative event. From a global perspective, the event can ripple across world trade and security. If the land bridge was part of a broader international supply chain, its destruction may force global firms to rethink sourcing, shift logistics, raise costs, or delay deliveries. Strategic alliances may change as states seek new partners to fill the gap. Insurance, shipping, logistics industries may adjust risk models. All of this means watchers of geopolitics and economics need to pay attention. It's worth noting that not all land bridge destructions become strategic earthquakes. The difference lies in how embedded the corridor was in broader systems, how reliant the users were, and how plausible alternatives were. What distinguishes the event we're reviewing is that analysts have identified exactly those features: high dependency, significant strategic linkages, and ready alternatives or emergent rivals. That's why the phrase strategic earthquake is being used. The fracture has deep, wide, lasting consequences. Let's consider the question of causation and vulnerability. Why did the bridge break? Critical corridors are often vulnerable because they carry concentrated flows, are choke points, or are in contested zones. Maintenance may be neglected, security may be fragile, alternative routes may not exist because of earlier strategic complacency. When an actor neglects redundancy, resilience, and diversification, the corridor becomes a single point of failure. And when that failure occurs, the shock is amplified. In some cases, the destruction is deliberate. A state may target the corridor to weaken the rival or to force renegotiation. In others, nature or internal collapse, economic or governance may play the role. Understanding the cause is important because it affects response. If sabotage, then security must be tightened. If infrastructure failure, then resilience must be improved. If overdependency, then diversification is required. Another point, the attitude of the controlling actor matters. If they have dominance over movement across the corridor, they may exploit it politically or economically. But reliance on that dominance can also make them overconfident and underinvested in resilience. Conversely, the users of the corridor may fail to invest in diversification because the route is convenient and reliable until it is gone. In both cases, the moment of collapse is a mirror. The weaknesses that were hidden become visible. Looking ahead, what are the lessons and what should states and businesses do? First, identify critical corridors, assess dependency and vulnerability. Do a failure mode analysis. What happens if this route is cut? Who is impacted? How much? For how long? Second, build redundancy and alternative routes. Invest in infrastructure diversification, multimodal logistics, decentralized supply. Third, develop resilience, buffer stocks, flexible manufacturing, adaptable trade flows. Fourth, monitor strategic dynamics. Rivals may be positioning alternatives, so pay attention to infrastructure diplomacy. Fifth, align humanitarian and economic policy. When a corridor is at risk, plan for the human cost, migration, regional economic shocks. Sixth, in diplomatic and defense strategy, recognize that geography remains powerful. Control or loss of a link can change strategic balances. In closing, we must remember that while the metaphor of earthquake helps emphasize suddenness and scale, the reality is that the ruptures we're seeing are often the culmination of underlying stresses, economic imbalances, geopolitical tensions, infrastructure neglect, strategic miscalculation. So the first step to resilience is recognizing that the corridor is already under strain even if it is functioning today. The destruction, then, is not purely surprise. It is the moment the stress exceeds the capacity. For the channel today, we should understand both the shock and the build-up. To sum up, the destruction of a strategic land bridge is far more than an infrastructure failure. It is a reordering event. It is a strategic earthquake whose aftershocks will be felt in trade, security, diplomacy, investment, and the everyday lives of people. By examining how the link was lost, how actors are responding, and how systems are shifting, we can gain insight into broader patterns of change. And by doing so, we can better prepare not just to rebuild the broken link, but to build systems that will not collapse so catastrophically next time. Thank you for watching today's review. If you found this insightful, give it a like, consider subscribing, and stay tuned because we'll continue unpacking more of these strategic infrastructure shifts and their global ripples. Until next time,